In this video, I'm going to talk about dynamic data masking. This is not a encryption feature. This is more of a security related thing that Microsoft has introduced in 2016. So what is dynamic data masking? If you have watched my beginning video, I have explained what is dynamic data masking, but let's go through in brief to see what is its future. In encryption, in the table, you encrypt the data, all right, and then you decrypt the data. But in the dynamic data masking, what happens is you store the data as it is, but when certain users access the data, you can mask some portion of the data and you can show some characters. For example, if customer service representatives are trying to access the customer records, then you can show last four digits of the character of SSN, for example. Then you can create a dynamic data masking function on the SSN column to mask first five characters and then show only the last four characters. Okay, you can create something like this. You can show first three characters or last four characters. Like that, there are some functions that SQL Server has introduced. If you use default, it is going to apply the default masking functions. For example, there is one function, email masking function, which masks whatever the email ID, but it can show you the last three characters or four characters. Like that, there is some random function or partial function. We'll go through these functions. Basically, the data is stored as it is, but when it displays to the user based on the level of access they have on that column, the data will be masked accordingly. But if sysadmin or if user has all the access to the data, then they can see the data without any masking. So this is not encryption. This is just masking the data. All right, so this is something new in 2016. In 2016, not only this, Microsoft introduced row level security. For some users, show the records. For different users, don't show some records. Again, you have to create some functions to apply the row level access for some users. So that is another feature. But let's talk about dynamic data masking. I have some scripts here. Let's go through the scripts. I'm going to copy this script. Okay, so I'm going to create a database, employee data, and then use the database, create a table, employee information. Here, employee information, there is employee ID, first name, last name, date of birth, etc., etc. And then insert some rows and select the three rows that we have inserted. For example, you can see here first name, last name, date of birth, current flags, sales last year, and email address. There are some few columns with the different data types. This is varchar, and then this is email address and date of birth. Things like that. Now we are going to apply some dynamic data functions on some of these columns and see how it shows the masking data to the users. Now let's create the user, because I am sysadmin on the box. I am going to create a login and then put restrictions on that login, what data they can view, what type of dynamic data functions has to be invoked on the columns, things like that. I need a limited access user account. So I'm going to create a user without login. Because I don't want login, just a user, database user should be sufficient. So just create the user, grant, I'm going to give select on the object for this user in the employee data database. All right. Now execute as user one. So you don't want to execute as this is as my account. Let's execute as this user account, and then select the employee information, You can see here the last name is masked. So let's see the see here masked with function default. I have applied default dynamic data mask function for all the columns, not for all the columns, these columns you can see here. Last name, birth date, current flag. So last name, when we have applied, this is a nvarchar 50 column. When we applied the default function, it shows the x for all the characters. And then let's see birth date. We have a different birth date, date of birth for the employees, but it shows 1900. This is the default date of birth. And then you can see here current flag 1. Um, but current flag is 0 here. And then for the sales last year, you have 20, 40, and 50, but it all shows 0 here. Okay. For the email, we didn't apply any masking function. That's why it is showing the details as it is. It is not applying any mask. Okay. But for integer column for the sick leave, it is showing all zeros. But whereas here, sick leave is 1 to 3. All right. Now, see, if I select like this, where birth date equal to 1985, 520, that means I am selecting this record. See, this user, when user 1 select the data, then the data is displayed as like this. But user can filter the data based on the birth date. For example, show me the records where birth date equal 1985, then this record is displayed. But birth date is shown as 1900. So, basically you can search the records, but you cannot see the value. I don't see much value in this. If you keep trying, okay, if you want to know the details of this user, you can keep trying the information. Okay, show me the birth date of this user, something like this, and then the birth date of this user, and then you can try his first name is Robert or it starts with F and things like that. And slowly, if you keep trying the options in the where class, you can figure out these values basically. So it is not completely secure, but it is just future available in SQL 2016. So these are the commands to grant unmask and revoke the unmask to the user. To see the columns that are masked, you can use sys.masked columns. So when you execute this query, you can see these are the columns that has been masked. So let's see if it shows any other details. Yeah, it shows, okay, is masked. What is the masking function here? Okay, and then so let's apply some masking functions. So we are going to apply the email function to the email address. Similarly, random function 1 to 5 to the sick leave. And similarly, we can apply some partial function to show partial value for the SSN column. All right, so these are some of the examples of applying. So we are altering the table to uh, to modify the schema to put some different functions, masking functions for the columns. Instead of default function, we are going to use an email function because this is email address, right? Now, if you execute as user and if you see select employee number, now you can see some columns here. For the email address, you can see the first character. Okay, that's how it works. And then it shows .com, even though it has .org, .net, but still it shows .com. Okay, for the SSN, it is showing the last 4 characters. So something like that, you can apply some functions and then see how it works. So this is how the dynamic data mask function works. It just masks the information. So you can mask however way you want, which one you want to show, which character you don't want to show. You want to apply some default function, random functions, or email functions, date functions, things like partial functions, right? So you can apply things like that. So this is the command to drop the masked function. If you say alter column drop mask, then you can drop that function for that column. So let's execute this one. Now you can see the column. All right, so that's how this dynamic data masking function works.